Crystal chandeliers shimmered above a sea of gowns and tuxedos, where laughter sounded like money and glances sliced sharper than glass. The Grand Elora Hotel was dressed in gold that night, every marble step polished, every flute of champagne chilled to perfection. It wasn't just a charity gala. It was the event of the season, where prestige was currency and humility had no seat at the table. Naomi Ellis stood at the entrance, her hands folded around a small silver clutch. Her gown wasn't designer, not by their standards, but it draped her frame with quiet power. Midnight blue silk, simple lines, nothing screaming for attention. She didn't need noise to be noticed. Yet, as she stepped forward, eyes turned anyway, not because they recognized her, but because they didn't. Every face that looked her way carried the same polished politeness, masking the same question. Who let her in? The orchestra swelled as Naomi handed her invitation to the hostess. The young woman smiled too quickly, scanning the elegant card as if expecting to find a mistake. Her eyes darted up and down Naomi's figure, pausing slightly too long on her natural curls and her deep brown skin, before forcing another polite smile. "Ah, Ms. Ellis, welcome," she said. But the word welcome sounded like it was trying to escape her throat. Naomi smiled softly and stepped inside. The ballroom unfolded like a painting, crystal chandeliers floating like stars, mirrors reflecting the grandeur in every direction. Guests in shimmering gowns and tailored suits mingled under the golden light, champagne flutes clinking as laughter rolled through the air like a rehearsed symphony. Naomi's heels clicked softly across the marble floor as she walked toward the center of the room. Every step felt like walking through layers of invisible scrutiny. Whispers followed, not loud, but sharp enough to cut. She must be someone's assistant. Is she with the catering team? I didn't know they were letting +1s from that organization this year. Naomi didn't look their way. She had heard whispers like that before, years ago, when she was a scholarship student in rooms built for legacy names. Years later, when she pitched investors who smiled at her numbers but laughed at her name. She had learned then, silence was not submission. It was strategy. At the far end of the hall, a small crowd gathered around a golden sign that read, "Donors and VIPs, Private Lounge, the gatekeepers of generosity." Naomi's eyes flicked toward the door, her lips curving slightly. She knew the irony. Tonight's gala was raising funds for minority entrepreneurs. Yet here, at the heart of it, the faces were pale, familiar, and comfortable. A woman with a diamond necklace that could pay for tuition for 50 students approached her. Her smile was sharp, professional. "I'm sorry, dear," she said lightly. "Staff entrances are to the left." Naomi turned to her slowly. "I'm not staff," the woman blinked, surprised at the calm response. "Oh, well, then enjoy the event." Her tone softened, not with kindness, but condescension. She turned away before Naomi could reply. Naomi looked around the room, taking in every chandelier, every polished spoon, every disingenuous smile. She wasn't angry, not yet. She was taking inventory, because this wasn't just a gala. It was a mirror, and the reflection it offered was painfully familiar. Across the room, a waiter nearly bumped into her, juggling glasses. Naomi reached out, steadying the tray before it tipped. "Thank you," he whispered quickly, eyes wide. He looked exhausted, moving too fast in a room that would never remember his face. She offered a kind smile before letting him go. The irony didn't escape her. She had once been in his shoes. Working night shifts, invisible among glittering people, learning that grace meant holding your dignity while others mistook it for servitude. As the evening went on, the auction began. The host, a silver-haired man with a voice smooth from years of public speaking, announced donations in booming tones. Names were praised, numbers were applauded. Naomi's name wasn't mentioned once, though her company's silent donation outmatched nearly all, combined. But she hadn't come for applause. She had come for perspective. When the host finally announced a brief intermission, Naomi slipped out toward the terrace. The cool night air brushed her face, the city lights below gleaming like embers. She took a slow breath, exhaling the tension she'd collected inside. Then, she heard it, the laughter, It drifted through the open terrace door. 2 women, their champagne voices slicing through the night. Did you see her gown? Probably off the rack. I know, right? She's brave showing up here. Bless her heart. She's sitting at table 12, can you imagine? Next to the board members. I almost feel sorry for her. Naomi turned slightly, her face illuminated by the glow of the city skyline. There was no anger in her expression, only something colder, steadier. The kind of calm that came right before an earthquake. She reached into her clutch, pulled out her phone, and scrolled to a message from her assistant. Confirmed. Transfer scheduled. Ownership papers ready for your signature tonight. Naomi stared at the message, her thumb hovering over send. Inside, laughter echoed. Glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and Naomi Ellis smiled. They thought, this was their night. They were about to learn whose name was written on the building's deed. Because when the world mistook her for less, she didn't argue. She simply waited for the moment to remind them exactly who she was. And that moment was about to arrive. Laughter floated through the ballroom-like perfume, sweet on the surface, but bitter underneath. The charity gala was in full swing now, a whirl of sequins, champagne, and self-importance. Every clink of crystal and polite chuckle carried an undertone. We belong here. You don't. Naomi Ellis stood near one of the grand pillars, her posture regal, her expression unreadable. From a distance, she looked like any other guest. But in the intricate dance of ego and wealth that filled the room, her silence made her stand out. She wasn't trying to prove herself, and that alone made them uneasy. A group of women by the dessert table whispered behind jeweled fingers, pretending to admire the decor while stealing glances at Naomi. Their laughter came in short bursts, practiced and cruel. One of them, a tall brunette with a glittering neckline, tilted her glass toward Naomi's direction. She must be someone's guest from the foundation, she said softly, but not softly enough. They've been trying to be more inclusive. The group laughed quietly, as if diversity were a punchline. Naomi turned slightly, meeting the brunette's eyes for the briefest moment. The woman's smirk faltered. There was something unsettling about Naomi's gaze, too calm, too certain, like she knew how the story would end. Across the room, a few men in tailored tuxedos stood near the silent auction table. Their conversation was low, but the arrogance was unmistakable. Did you see that woman who walked in earlier? The one in the blue dress? One said, another chuckled. Yeah, thought she was catering staff at first. Nearly handed her my jacket. A ripple of laughter followed. Naomi didn't react. She simply continued observing. She had learned long ago that in rooms like these, people often expose themselves without help. The event planner, a young woman with nervous energy and too much responsibility, approached Naomi, clutching a clipboard. Her smile was strained, professional, but her tone wavered with discomfort. Excuse me, ma'am, she began. I'm so sorry to bother you, but could I see your donor badge? The VIP lounge is reserved for confirmed patrons. Naomi looked at her evenly. I'm a donor, she said softly. The planner hesitated. Of course. Your name isn't on the visible list. It might be an oversight. Naomi reached into her clutch and produced her invitation. The planner's eyes flicked over it, confusion knitting her brow. The embossed logo gleamed under the chandelier. It was authentic. Too authentic. Oh, I see, she murmured, trying to recover. Well, enjoy your evening. But the damage was done. The surrounding guests had noticed. A few exchanged glances, smirking behind champagne rims. Others pretended not to look, but whispered all the same. Naomi turned away, her expression still poised, though her heartbeat had slowed to a measured rhythm. She knew this choreography. It was one she'd danced her entire life. Exclusion disguised as etiquette, insult veiled in politeness. At the buffet, an older man with a heavy watch and heavier ego was speaking too loudly. You know what I find inspiring? He said, gesturing toward Naomi. People who try. She's clearly trying to fit in. We need more of that. The group around him chuckled. Someone added, bless her heart. Naomi poured herself a glass of sparkling water and raised it slightly, as if toasting them from across the room. The gesture made one of them choke on his drink. The gesture made one of them choke on his drink. The host took the stage again, his voice booming through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a round of applause for our generous donors and sponsors tonight." The crowd clapped obediently. Names rolled off his tongue like titles of nobility: Harrington, Whitford, St. James. Each received applause, some even standing ovations. Naomi's name did not appear once. Her company had contributed the single largest donation of the evening, routed quietly through an affiliate foundation. She didn't want credit. She wanted to watch. The applause faded. The host smiled. And of course, a special thanks to the Allura Group for allowing us to use this magnificent venue. Naomi's lips curved slightly at that. The Allura Group, the company she had just acquired hours ago. The ink on the ownership papers was still drying. None of them knew. Not yet. She let her gaze travel across the room, the glimmering lights, the smug faces, the carefully curated arrogance. The same people who judged her now had no idea they were standing on her floor, drinking from her glasses, dining under her chandeliers. Then came the final insult. As she approached the VIP section, her invitation clearly marked for all areas, a tall man in a tuxedo stepped forward, blocking her way. He was the head of security, all muscle and obedience. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said. "This area is restricted, donors only." Naomi showed him her invitation. He frowned. "I'll need confirmation from management. Please wait over there." A few guests nearby turned to watch, whispering. The event planner hurried over, flustered. "It's fine, she's with one of the guests," she said quickly, eyes darting nervously. The humiliation was subtle, but sharp. The unspoken message hung in the air. "You don't belong here." Naomi inhaled slowly, then smiled. Not out of kindness, but clarity. Every laugh, every whisper, every dismissive glance, they weren't bruises. They were proof. Proof of why she worked the way she did, why she built what she built, why she owned what they thought they controlled. Across the room, the host lifted his glass again. "To a night of generosity and grace," he declared. Naomi raised her glass too, but in her eyes there was something far deeper, an ember of justice glowing steady and calm. Because what they saw as a woman trying to fit in was in truth a woman surveying her kingdom before claiming it. The laughter swelled again, but this time Naomi heard something different underneath it, a tremor. It was the sound of arrogance seconds away from collapse, and soon they would know just how fragile their hierarchy really was. The music had softened into a slow jazz tune, a thin veil over the sharp edges of the evening. The gala was at its peak, champagne flutes half empty, laughter louder, dignity thinner. Naomi stood by the window now, watching the city lights flicker through the glass like distant embers. She had been humiliated enough times to recognize the pattern, the mocking smiles, the measured politeness, the invisible boundaries. But tonight, it wasn't just the same routine. Tonight, it was public. A group of investors had gathered near the central fountain, their conversation animated, careless. They were discussing the success of the evening, the future of the foundation, and, unknowingly, Naomi herself. "You know," one of them said, swirling his drink, "it's admirable when people from less fortunate backgrounds try to mingle in these circles. Takes courage." "Or delusion," another replied, and they laughed. "I mean, that woman in blue? What was her name? Naomi something?" A smirk. "You mean the one who looks like she took a wrong turn from the catering staff?" The laughter burst again, full-bodied now, no restraint left. Naomi turned slightly, her gaze catching their reflection in the glass. She didn't need to face them to feel every word. Each insult slid across the room like a blade wrapped in silk. At that exact moment, the host's assistant appeared beside the stage, whispering urgently into his ear. He nodded, smiled, and tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the laughter, "a quick announcement before dessert is served. We've just received confirmation of a major new acquisition in the city tonight. The Allura Group, yes, the very company that owns this beautiful venue, has officially changed hands. The guests murmured with interest, oblivious to the storm gathering in plain sight. "Oh?" someone said. "Who bought it?" The host grinned. "Well, the new owner happens to be one of our guests this evening." The murmurs grew louder now. Names began to circle like flies. Whitford? Harrington? One of the donors? Naomi set her glass down gently on the edge of the windowsill and turned. The light caught her dress, the satin glowing like midnight water. She began to walk toward the stage, her heels soft against the marble, her presence suddenly commanding the room. People turned as she passed. Conversations faltered. Laughter died mid-breath. Even the jazz band missed a note. The host spotted her approach, blinking in confusion. "Ah, yes? Miss, can I—" Naomi smiled, calm and polite. "You were saying," she said softly, "that the new owner is among us tonight?" He nodded, hesitant. "Yes. Do you know them?" Naomi reached into her clutch, withdrew a folded document, and placed it gently on the podium. The golden seal of Allura Group shimmered under the stage lights. "I don't just know them," she said. "I am them." For a moment, silence swallowed the room. Then came the ripple, shock, disbelief, denial. The investors near the fountain exchanged looks of panic. Their laughter turned to ash. The host blinked, flipping through the document with trembling hands. The signatures were there. Legal, binding, unmistakable. Naomi Ellis, sole owner of Allura Group Holdings. Naomi turned to face the audience, her voice clear and even. "Some of you," she said, "wondered who I was tonight. Some of you assumed, laughed, corrected me, asked me to wait outside." Her eyes found the event planner, the security guard, the men by the fountain. None of them could meet her gaze now. She continued, her tone still composed, almost gentle. "You didn't know that every step you took in this building, every glass you held, every chandelier above your head, already belonged to me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "No way!" Another said, "She's lying." But the truth was there, stamped and signed. Naomi turned back to the host. "Please continue your program," she said, "and make sure my guests are comfortable. I'll be staying for dessert." The room buzzed with stunned silence as she stepped down from the stage. The men who had mocked her earlier tried to laugh it off, their smiles brittle, forced. "Miss Ellis," one stammered, stepping forward. "That's incredible, truly. We were just joking earlier, of course." Naomi stopped in front of him. Her eyes were kind but cold. "Were you?" she asked softly. "Then I suppose the joke's over." She turned away, leaving him speechless, the weight of his own arrogance pressing down like gravity. By the time she reached her seat again, the mood of the room had shifted completely. Conversations were hushed, faces were red. Some offered polite smiles now, too late. The same people who dismissed her minutes ago were tripping over themselves to be seen with her. Naomi didn't bask in it. She didn't need to. Revenge wasn't the point. Truth was, because now, in front of them all, the mask had fallen. The same people who believed in status and superiority were forced to confront the reality they had refused to see, that power has no color and dignity needs no permission. As the band resumed playing, Naomi lifted her glass once more. "To new beginnings," she whispered to herself. But behind her calm smile, there was still a spark, not of anger, but of purpose, because owning the venue was only step one. She wasn't done yet. She never was. The gala had ended in uneasy applause. The lights dimmed, and the guests filtered out with forced smiles, their laughter replaced by murmurs of disbelief. Naomi stood alone now, the echo of heels fading. Down the marble corridor, the scent of perfume and champagne dissolving into silence. The event planner, the same woman who had once looked at her as if she didn't belong, approached cautiously. "Miss Ellis," she said, voice trembling. I had no idea you were—" Naomi turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "That I was— what?" the woman swallowed. "That you were— the owner." Naomi gave a small nod, neither smiling nor scowling. "And if I weren't?" she asked softly. "Would my worth have changed?" The question hung in the air, heavier than the chandeliers above. The planner looked down, unable to answer. Naomi dismissed her with a quiet wave. "Go home. Reflect. Tomorrow, things will be different here." The woman nodded quickly and hurried away. Naomi walked through the ballroom, her fingertips brushing. The backs of the chairs, the edge of the stage, the silk-draped tables. Every inch of this place had once been a symbol of exclusion, and now it was hers. Hers. As she reached the stage, the general manager approached, his face pale, his hands fidgeting with his tie. "Ms. Ellis," he said nervously, "on behalf of our team, I want to personally apologize for—" She cut him off with a look. "You allowed them to humiliate me." He froze. "You watched," she continued, her voice calm but cutting. "You saw how they treated me, how your staff spoke to me. You didn't step in. You didn't protect a guest. You protected your illusion of hierarchy. I didn't mean—" "No," Naomi said quietly. "You didn't mean to see me." He lowered his head, shame burning his skin. Naomi took a breath, steady, measured. "Effective immediately," she said. "You're relieved of your position." His mouth fell open. "What?" "Ms. Ellis, please. You'll remain as a temporary advisor until I find someone who knows how to treat people with dignity. Until then, consider this your lesson in humility." He tried to protest again, but the look in her eyes silenced him. Naomi walked past him, her heels clicking like punctuation marks on marble. As she stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the city, she took in the skyline, the glitter of towers, the pulse of traffic, the soft hum of life below. This city had built its wealth on exclusion. But tonight it had shifted, just slightly, in her favor. Her phone buzzed. A message from her assistant, transfer complete, full ownership registered. Press release ready for approval. Naomi typed back one line, "Send it now." Within minutes, the news spread like wildfire. Social media posts, breaking alerts, whispers in boardrooms. Black entrepreneur Naomi Ellis acquires luxury events Empire Elora Group Holdings. By morning, her face would be on every business page. But tonight, she wasn't thinking about headlines. She was thinking about that moment, the way they'd laughed, the way they'd looked right through her, and the silence that followed when the truth hit. That silence, she thought, was the real sound of power shifting. A soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Ms. Ellis?" It was Maya, one of the junior staff members, the only one who had spoken kindly to her earlier, offering her a drink when others ignored her. She stood timidly at the door. Naomi turned and smiled, a real one this time. "Maya, right?" The young woman nodded. "Yes, ma'am, I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how everyone treated you. I tried to stop them, but—" Naomi raised a hand gently. "You don't have to explain. I saw you." Maya blinked, surprised. Naomi walked over, her tone soft but firm. "I need people here who understand respect, not just for money, but for humanity. How would you feel about managing this venue?" Maya's eyes widened. "Me? Ma'am, I don't know if I—" "You'll learn," Naomi said, "and I'll teach you." For the first time that evening, Naomi saw tears, not of humiliation, but of gratitude. As Maya left to compose herself, Naomi leaned on the railing, the city's wind brushing against her face. The laughter that had once filled this hall still echoed faintly in her mind, but now it was powerless. Power, she realized, wasn't about owning a building. It was about owning yourself, about standing so firm in your worth that no one could ever make you small again. Behind her, the last of the Gala's lights flickered out. The night ended where her new empire began, not built from vengeance, but from vision. And as she turned to leave, her reflection in the glass caught her eye. A black woman in control of everything she was once denied. Tomorrow, she would begin rebuilding this place, not as a ballroom of exclusion, but as a hall of opportunity. But tonight, she allowed herself a quiet smile and whispered into the stillness. Now they'll remember my name, not because I owned the room, but because I changed it. A year passed. The grand ballroom that once shimmered with exclusivity now glowed with something different: inclusion. The gold had not dulled, nor had the chandeliers dimmed, but their reflection now fell on a new kind of guest list. Gone were the nights of whispered mockery and elitist laughter. In their place stood a room full of dreamers, young black entrepreneurs, women in modest but radiant dresses, students, small business owners, artists, innovators, people who once would have been told, "You don't belong here." Now, they were honored guests. Naomi Ellis stood backstage, looking out over the sea of faces. The same venue that had once been her battlefield was now her sanctuary. Their sanctuary. She had rebuilt the Allura Gala into an annual event called the Unity Ball, a celebration of achievement, diversity, and dignity. As her assistant adjusted her microphone, she smiled faintly. "You've come a long way, Miss Ellis," the assistant said softly. Naomi looked at her reflection one last time, confident, poised, regal. "No," she replied, "we all have." When she stepped onto the stage, the applause came like thunder. It wasn't polite or forced, it was real. The sound of respect earned, not demanded. Naomi raised a hand, and the room quieted. "Last year," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I stood in this very room as an uninvited guest." A few people in the crowd exchanged knowing looks. The story of that night had become legend. "I was judged," Naomi continued, "dismissed, laughed at, because of how I looked, how I dressed, and who they thought I was. But what they didn't know was that while they were measuring my worth by appearance, I was measuring theirs by integrity." A ripple of agreement moved through the crowd. Cameras flashed, but Naomi's gaze remained fixed on the people, not the lenses. "That night, when I bought this venue, I made myself a promise," she said. "I promised that this place would never again be a stage for arrogance, only for empowerment. And today, as I stand before you, I can finally say that promise has been kept." Applause burst out again, warm and loud. But Naomi wasn't done. She took a breath, her tone deepening with conviction. "To every person who's ever been told they didn't belong, remember this: your presence is not a privilege they grant you. It's a right you own by birth. The world may try to write your value in small print, but it's up to you to rewrite it in bold." Her words hung in the air, electric. At one of the tables near the back, a man shifted uncomfortably, the former event planner's supervisor. He had been among those who humiliated her a year ago. Naomi noticed him, paused, then smiled faintly. "I see some familiar faces tonight," she said. The crowd chuckled softly, sensing her undertone. Some have returned with open hearts. Others still learning. That's fine. Growth isn't about shame, it's about change. The man looked down. But Naomi didn't linger on him. Instead, she gestured toward a small group at the front, young men and women dressed simply, nervous but proud. "These are our scholarship recipients," she said, her eyes softening. "Future founders, future leaders. Every one of them here tonight because we built this place on respect instead of ridicule." The audience erupted in applause again, some standing. The students waved shyly. As the ovation faded, Naomi concluded, "I didn't buy this place to prove I could. I bought it to prove we could, to show that power doesn't come from wealth, it comes from worth. And the worth of a person is never determined by the color of their skin, but by the courage in their spirit." She paused, letting that line land. It did, deeply. Then she smiled, not as a victor, but as a visionary. "So tonight," she said softly, "raise your glass not to me, but to yourselves, to everyone who was ever underestimated, overlooked, or undervalued. May you never let anyone else define your light." As the orchestra began to play, the guests rose, lifting their glasses high. The reflection of the chandeliers danced across their faces, every shade, Every story, every struggle, all shimmering together as one, from the balcony above. Maya, now the full-time director of events, watched with tears in her eyes. Naomi had kept her promise. She had turned humiliation into legacy. And as the night deepened, Naomi stepped away from the stage and stood near the same window where it all began. The city lights flickered below, no longer distant. They felt closer now, reachable. In their glow, she whispered to herself, "They tried to make me small. And instead, they made me unstoppable." And just like that, the night, once filled with cruelty, became a celebration of everything they never saw coming. The same room that once silenced her now echoed her truth forever. Now echoed her truth forever.